much, Mr. Betts. It's a real pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I would like to congratulate the honourable member for bringing this very important debate here to Westminster Hall, because everyone should have the right to easy access to public buildings. And the roughly 1 in 100 people in the United Kingdom who are on the autism spectrum are no exception. While there is, of course, more that can be done, we have made great strides in making public buildings more accessible to people with more visible disabilities. Take, for example, the advances that have been made on wheelchair access. It is important, however, that we also make public buildings more accessible to people with invisible disabilities like autism. Easier access to public buildings makes it easier to go about one's daily life and to access public services. People with autism should not have that access compromised because basic common sense adjustments have not been made to certain buildings. Accessibility is as much an issue for them as it is for people with more visible disabilities. Now, according to the National Autistic Society, 79% of autistic people and 70% of their families feel socially isolated. It is crucial that public buildings are organised in a way that autistic people and their families feel comfortable going to them. There are a number of simple adjustments that can be made to buildings to make them even more accessible to people with autism. So, removing overly bright colours, loud noises and clutter, ensuring that signage is clear and explicit, and making the layout of the building more predictable. It does not take that much to make some relatively small adjustments that can really help people with autism and their families. Likewise, it is important to promote autism awareness amongst staff. Half of autistic people and their families sometimes do not go out because of concern about people's reactions to autism. The more that we can educate staff in these buildings and the public in general about autism, the more accessible public spaces will be for people with autism and their families. Encouraging understanding is just as important as making physical adjustments. It is important that the UK Government and the Scottish Government and local authorities all work collectively together to make public buildings more autism-friendly and more accessible to people with both visible and invisible disabilities in general. Now, I do believe that the UK Government has a good record on encouraging the public sector to be more autism-friendly, and I very much hope that it continues and redoubles those efforts in the near future. We should aim to be an accessible and inclusive society, one where access to public spaces is as easy as possible for people with autism and their families, and indeed for people with various disabilities. This will involve building on the progress we have made in this regard, and that will require impetus from all levels of government, and it will require both physical adjustments and awareness raising. But in an area where, for relatively little, we can make a big, tangible, positive difference to the lives of an awful lot of people. Thank you very much, Mr. Betts.